A woman fleeing a life of misery. A duke escaping a forced marriage. Neither expected the other. Tonight's story is, she tried to hide in the wedding carriage, but the duke was already sitting in the shadows. When Rosalind Munro climbed into the opulent carriage, she was only thinking of escape. She was desperate to flee the cruelty of her cousin, the bride. But a voice from the darkness stopped her heart. Sebastian Vane, the Duke of Crestwood, the groom himself, was already there, and he wasn't dressed for a wedding. They were trapped, two fugitives in a runaway carriage, hurtling toward a scandal that would either destroy them or expose a truth more dangerous than either could imagine. Rosalind Munro pressed herself flat against the damp brick of the mews, her breath held tight in her chest. Her thin maid's dress was a poor shield against the biting London air, but it was the pounding of her heart that truly chilled her. Today was the wedding day of her cousin, Lady Beatrice Montcroft, and Rosalind was committing theft. She was not, however, a thief by nature. She was a woman pushed to the edge. For 5 years, since her own family's ruin, she had been the unpaid companion, the glorified servant, to the viciously vain Beatrice. She had endured the pinches, the insults, and the casual cruelty. Today, it was ending. Her target was not the Montcroft family silver. It was a small, velvet-lined box tucked inside the bride's wedding carriage. Inside that box was a sapphire brooch. It was not Beatrice's, it was Rosalind's, the last stolen remnant of her own mother's dowry, which Beatrice had borrowed years ago and refused to return, keeping it as a petty trophy of her power. The carriage stood alone in the cobbled yard, a monstrosity of white lacquer and gold leaf, the Montcroft crest emblazoned on the door. The groom, the formidable Sebastian Vane, Duke of Crestwood, was due at the church. This carriage was to collect Beatrice. It was empty. It was her only chance. A stable hand disappeared into a tack room. Now. Rosalind darted from the shadows. Her movements were silent, practiced from years of making herself invisible. The carriage door handle was cold. She turned it, slipped inside, and pulled the heavy door shut, plunging the carriage into an opulent, silk-scented darkness. She fell to her knees on the plush floor, her hands scrambling beneath the velvet-upholstered bench. Beatrice had bragged about the carriage's hidden comforts: a compartment for champagne, a drawer for yes. Her fingers found a small, carved wooden handle. She pulled. The drawer slid open with a whisper. Her hand dove in, past a flask, past a book, and then her fingers brushed the velvet box. Relief flooded her, so potent it almost made her weep. She had it. She would take the brooch, flee this house, and sell it. It was enough to buy passage to America, to start new. She clutched the box to her chest. She would wait until the carriage began to move, then slip out at the first crowded corner. A deep, masculine voice shattered the silence. I wouldn't bother. The sapphires are fakes. Rosalind froze. She was not alone. Her eyes strained in the dim light, which filtered only faintly through the drawn silken curtains. A large shape was occupying the opposite bench. A man. He was not in the shadows. He was the shadows. "Who are you?" she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. The man leaned forward. The sliver of light from the curtain's edge caught the sharp plane of his cheekbone and the glint of a dark, unamused eye. He was dressed not in the finery of a groom, but in dark, immaculate riding leathers. "A pertinent question," he rumbled. His voice was low, like distant thunder. "Though I believe the more pressing one is, who are you?" Rosalind's mind raced. This was the Duke, Sebastian Vane, the Iron Duke, as the papers called him. The man Beatrice was supposed to marry in less than an hour. He was supposed to be at the church, waiting. "You are, Your Grace," she stammered, scrambling backward until she hit the carriage door. "I am sorry. I was checking the—" "Stealing," he supplied, his voice utterly devoid of emotion. "You were stealing the brooch, a desperate, clumsy attempt. But you are correct on one count. The sapphires are fakes. Beatrice had them replaced with paste years ago and sold the originals to pay a gambling debt she believed no one would notice." Rosalind's stomach dropped. The brooch was worthless. Her entire plan was worthless. She was trapped in a carriage with the most powerful man in England, a man she had just tried to rob. "Please, Your Grace," she pleaded, the velvet box falling from her nerveless fingers. "I can explain. My cousin, it was mine." The Duke of Crestwood didn't seem to be listening. He was looking at the door, as if expecting something. "Your name?" "Rosalind. Rosalind Munro. Lady Beatrice's companion." "Ah," he said, a world of understanding in that single sound. The poor relation, the one she sharpens her claws on. Before Rosalind could process the shock of his observation, the carriage rocked violently. Shouts echoed from outside. The carriage door handle rattled. Rosalind gasped, thinking they were discovered. "Stay down," the Duke commanded, his voice a sudden, sharp blade. He did not move, but his entire presence seemed to fill the carriage, radiating a cold, dangerous energy. The door flew open. It was not a stable hand. It was a man in the Duke's own livery. "Your Grace," the man panted, "Montcroft's men are at the front gate. They're demanding to know why you are not at the church. And the Dowager, she has arrived." "Then we are leaving," the Duke said simply. "But Your Grace, the bride—" "The plan is unchanged," the Duke snapped. "Go." The door slammed shut. A whip cracked. The carriage leaped forward, throwing Rosalind from her seat. She landed hard against the Duke's legs. His knees were like granite. She tried to scramble away, mortified, but the carriage was moving too fast, rattling over the cobblestones at a breakneck speed. "What is happening?" she cried, clinging to the bench strap. "Where are we going? This isn't the way to the church!" Sebastian Vane leaned back into the shadows, his face becoming a mystery once more. His voice, however, was terrifyingly clear. "Correct, Miss Munro. It is not." He paused, and Rosalind could feel the weight of his gaze in the dark. "I have no intention of going to the church. I was, in fact, escaping. And you, my little thief, are now my accomplice." The carriage thundered through the streets of London, its speed reckless. Rosalind hauled herself back onto the bench, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Accomplice?" she choked out. "You're escaping? But the wedding, your titles, your duty, Lady Beatrice." A sound that might have been a laugh, cold and sharp, came from the shadows. "Duty," he spat, "is a word men like Lord Montcroft use to line their pockets. Titles are a burden I have carried since I was 10. And Lady Beatrice," he paused, "is a price I am unwilling to pay." They hit a pothole, and Rosalind was thrown forward again. This time the Duke's hand shot out, his fingers wrapping around her upper arm to steady her. His grip was not gentle, but it was firm, and it kept her from falling. The touch was impersonal, like being held by a steel trap, yet it sent a strange jolt through her. She pulled her arm away as soon as the carriage stabilized. "You cannot be serious. You have jilted her. You have jilted Lady Beatrice Montcroft. The scandal will be— it will be monumental." "It will be inconvenient," he corrected, his tone dismissive. "A duke does not jilt, Miss Munro. He postpones, or in this case, he disappears. Lord Montcroft was attempting to trap me. I am merely declining the invitation." "Trap you? How?" "It is the most advantageous match of the season." Advantageous for him, Sebastian said. He shifted, and the light from a passing street lamp illuminated his profile. He was not handsome in the classical sense. His features were too harsh, his jaw too severe. But he was compelling. He radiated a power that was both unsettling and magnetic. My father, he began, his voice dropping, left my estates in a precarious position, a position Lord Montcroft was all too eager to help me with. This marriage was not a union, it was a merger. Montcroft intended to bind my assets to his, and I have reason to believe he intended to take control of both. Rosalind was stunned into silence. She had only ever seen the world from the bottom, the insults, the petty cruelties. She had never considered the dangers of the top. "But where are you going?" she asked, her voice small. "Where are we going? You have to let me out. I am no part of this." "You became a part of this when you climbed into my escape carriage," he said flatly. "And you will remain a part of it until I am clear of London. My driver has instructions to take this carriage to a post-chaise I have waiting in Highgate. From there, I ride north." "North? To where?" "To my estate, Crestwood, in Yorkshire." "Yorkshire?" she gasped. "That is days from here. You must stop. Let me out at the next corner. I will fade away. No one will ever know I was here." "And what will you do, Miss Monroe?" "Penniless, with a worthless brooch, and now a jilted bride's cousin. When Montcroft realizes I am gone, he will tear the city apart looking for me. And when Beatrice realizes her companion is also missing, what story do you think she will tell?" The blood drained from Rosalind's face. He was right. Beatrice, in her fury, would not hesitate to paint Rosalind as a villain, a thief, a conspirator. She would be hunted. "They will say I helped you," she whispered, the horror dawning. "They will say I was your mistress, that we planned this." "Precisely," the Duke said. "Your reputation will be utterly destroyed. Mine will recover. I am a duke. Yours will not." She looked at him, this cold, calculating man who had just laid out her ruin with the dispassion of a weather forecast. "You are a monster." "I am a realist," he countered, "and I am offering you a choice you did not have 10 minutes ago." The carriage suddenly slowed. Rosalind tensed. "We are approaching the posting inn at Highgate," he said. "This is where my carriage and my men are waiting. You have 2 options. You can get out here. You can take your chances on the streets of London, where Lord Montcroft's men are likely already searching. Or you can come with me." "Come with you?" she scoffed. "As what? Your prisoner? Your mistress?" "As my employee," he said. Rosalind blinked. "What?" "I am going to Crestwood to uncover the truth about my father's death, which I do not believe was an accident. Lord Montcroft is at the center of it. You, Miss Monroe, were in his house. You know his daughter. You know his habits. You are observant. I saw you in the mews. You moved like a shadow. I need a shadow. You want me to be your spy? I want you to be my assistant. I will pay you a salary, a generous one, enough to buy passage to America 10 times over. I will give you my protection. When this is over, you will be free to go, with a reputation restored. I will see to it, and the funds to start your new life." The carriage rolled to a stop. The door opened, revealing a dark, fog-shrouded inn-yard. A larger, sturdier travelling coach stood waiting, horses already harnessed. "You have 30 seconds to decide, Miss Monroe," the Duke said, standing and stepping out of the carriage. He turned, silhouetted against the lantern light, a tall, imposing figure. "The streets of London or the roads of Yorkshire?" Rosalind looked at the dark, wet street. She thought of Beatrice's cold smile, She thought of Lord Montcroft's oily voice. She thought of the worthless sapphire paste. She was ruined either way. But with him, she had a chance. She took the velvet box from the floor. She stood, her legs shaking, and walked to the carriage door. "The sapphires may be fakes, Your Grace," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "But the brooch itself was my mother's. I am keeping it." She stepped out of the wedding carriage and onto the muddy stones of the inn yard. The Duke of Crestwood almost smiled. "Very well, Miss Monroe. Welcome to my employ." The journey north was a blur of discomfort and tension. The new carriage was built for speed, not comfort, and they travelled with a relentless urgency. They did not stop at grand inns, but at small, discreet posting houses, where the Duke's men had arranged for fresh horses, and where no one asked questions about the pale woman in a maid's dress travelling with the Mr. Sebastian, as his men called him. Rosalind learned that the Duke of Crestwood travelled with an efficiency that was both admirable and terrifying. His two outriders, a grim-faced man named Thomas and his equally silent son, Robert, operated with military precision. They were fed, housed, and on the road again before Rosalind felt she had even caught her breath. She and the Duke were forced into an intimacy that was purely circumstantial. They sat opposite each other for hours on end, the space between their knees a contested territory. He was, for the most part, silent. He read. He stared out the window. He reviewed papers from a leather satchel, his brow furrowed. Rosalind was left with her own thoughts, which were far from pleasant. She had escaped one prison only to find herself in another, albeit a faster-moving one. On the second night, they were forced to stop at a slightly larger, more public coaching inn. A storm had turned the roads to mud, and even the Duke's iron will could not force the horses further. The innkeeper, a bustling, red-faced man, looked from the Duke's severe expression to Rosalind's travel-worn state. "Just the one room for you and the missus?" he asked, winking. Rosalind's face burned. Before she could correct him, the Duke spoke. "We require 2 rooms. The best you have." His voice was cold, and the innkeeper's smile vanished. "Ah, right you are, sir. Beg pardon, sir. We've only the one room left. The gentry room. The storm, you see. We're full to the rafters." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "That will not do." "It's a large room, sir," the innkeeper said hastily. "With a screen and a good fire. It's that or the stables." The Duke looked at Rosalind. For the first time, she saw a flicker of something other than cold calculation in his eyes. Was it apology? "We will take the room," he said, his voice clipped. He threw a heavy purse on the counter, and a meal and a bath for the lady. The room was large, but it was still one room. A heavy folding screen was a flimsy barrier in the face of their situation. Rosalind, having bathed and changed into a simple but clean dress Thomas had procured for her, sat by the fire, her back to the screen. She could hear the Duke on the other side, the rustle of his clothes, the splash of water as he washed. It was unbearably intimate. "You said," she began, staring into the flames, "that you were investigating your father's death. You said you believe Lord Montcroft was involved." The splashing stopped. There was a long silence. "I do," he said finally, his voice slightly muffled. "Why?" "The papers all said it was a hunting accident, a fall from his horse." "My father was the finest horseman in England," Sebastian said, and the coldness was back, laced with a raw grief. "He did not fall. Not from his favourite hunter. Not on a clear day. But what does Lord Montcroft have to do with it?" "My father and Montcroft were rivals, in business, in politics. But a month before he died, they suddenly became partners. My father signed over a staggering amount of proxy control to Montcroft, tied to a loan I can find no record of. The marriage between myself and Beatrice was the final piece of that agreement. It would have made Montcroft the effective master of my estates. He emerged from behind the screen. He wore his trousers and a loose linen shirt, his feet bare. His dark hair was damp, and without his stiff cravat, he looked younger and somehow more dangerous. My father, Sebastian continued, walking to the window, would never have agreed to such terms. Not willingly. So, you believe Montcroft blackmailed him, or he had him killed, the Duke finished, and then used a forged document to claim a debt. Rosalind watched him. This was the Iron Duke, a man driven by a cold, dark vengeance, a man who had just upended his entire life to pursue it. "And me?" she asked, her voice quiet. "How do I fit into this? What observation did you see? You do not know me. I know you survived 5 years with Beatrice Montcroft. That requires a spine of steel, hidden beneath a veneer of submission. I know you were willing to risk ruin to retrieve a piece of your past. That shows loyalty." He turned from the window to face her. "And I know you were in her chambers every day. You heard her talk. You read her letters. You know the family's secrets. Did Lord Montcroft visit often? Did he meet with anyone in private? Did Beatrice speak of my father? Think, Miss Munro. Your prison may have been your greatest advantage." Rosalind searched her memory, sifting through years of humiliation. She remembered Beatrice complaining about her father's boring meetings. "There was a man," she said slowly. "He came to the house. Not often, but his visits were always secret. Beatrice called him Papa's wretched solicitor. His name was Dryden. Mr. Dryden. From York." The Duke went perfectly still. "Dryden?" he repeated, his voice a low growl. "Yes. Beatrice said he was the only man her father was afraid of. He always came late at night and left before dawn." Sebastian crossed the room in 2 strides. He stopped in front of her chair, and she had to crane her neck to look at him. His eyes were blazing. "Mr. Dryden was my father's solicitor, Miss Munro, not Montcroft's. But then why would he be meeting Montcroft?" "That," the Duke said, "is precisely what I intend to find out." He looked at her, truly looked at her, and his expression was no longer cold. It was one of sharp, sudden respect. "You have just confirmed my suspicions. Dryden holds my father's private papers. He is the key, and he is in York. So we are going to see him?" "We are, and you, Miss Munro, will be with me." A log shifted in the fire, sending a cascade of sparks. The storm raged outside, but in the small, warm room, a new, fragile alliance had been forged. Rosalind was no longer just a passenger. She was a participant, and for the first time in her life, she was not afraid. The rest of the journey to York was different. The silence in the carriage was no longer empty. It was filled with an unspoken understanding. The Duke, Sebastian, as he had insisted she call him, if we are to be co-conspirators, talked. He did not speak of feelings, but of facts. He laid out the intricacies of his father's shipping empire, the tangle of investments, and the specific properties that Lord Montcroft now threatened. He treated her not as a poor relation, but as an equal, a colleague. He would ask her questions about the Montcroft household, and her answers, which she had always considered trivial, would make him nod slowly. "Beatrice kept her own accounts?" he asked, surprised. "She tried," Rosalind said. "But she was always in debt. She bought gowns and jewels constantly. Her father would rage, but he always paid." "So he indulged her," Sebastian mused. "No," Rosalind corrected. "He controlled her. He would let her run up the debt, then use it as leverage. She was terrified of him. She was cruel to me because I was the only person she was not terrified of. Sebastian looked at her, his gaze intense. You are a very astute observer of human nature, Rosalind. He had used her full name, not Miss Monroe. A warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the carriage's modest heating brick. They stopped for the night in a small village south of York. As Thomas and Robert saw to the horses, Sebastian insisted they walk. The storm had passed, and the air was crisp and clear. They walked down the quiet village lane, a strange pair, the powerfully built Duke in his immaculate, if travel-worn clothes, and the woman who was rapidly forgetting she was supposed to be a maid. The peace was shattered by the arrival of the London mail coach. It rattled to a stop at the inn, and a passenger tossed a day-old newspaper to the ground. Sebastian picked it up. His face darkened as he read the front page. "What is it?" Rosalind asked. He handed it to her. The headline was bold and black. "Duke of Crestwood abandons bride, flees with companion in shameful elopement." Rosalind's knees went weak. The story was venomous. It painted Sebastian as a reckless fool, but it reserved its true vitriol for her. She was a scheming social climber, an artful seductress, a common thief who had bewitched the Duke and kidnapped him from his own wedding. Lord Montcroft had offered a substantial reward for her capture. Dead or alive? "He wants me dead," she whispered, the paper trembling in her hands. "He wants you silenced," Sebastian corrected, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He was furious, not for his own name, but for hers. "He is controlling the narrative. He has painted you as the villain, so no one will question him." "We must hide," Rosalind said, her panic rising. "We must separate. If they find me with you, they will find you with me," Sebastian stated, his jaw set. "We do not hide, Rosalind. We do not run. We finish this. We go to York. We see Dryden. We find the proof to destroy Montcroft. He has offered a reward. Every bounty hunter, every desperate man between here and London will be looking for me. For us. Let them look," he said. He took the paper from her, crumpled it in his fist, and tossed it into a ditch. He took her arm, his grip possessive. "You are under my protection. No harm will come to you." The conviction in his voice was absolute. But as they walked back to the inn, Rosalind saw Thomas speaking urgently to a stable boy, slipping him a coin. She saw Robert checking the perimeter, his hand never far from the pistol at his belt. That night, they did not take 2 rooms. They took the inn's only defensible suite, a large room with one door, which Thomas and Robert guarded from the outside. A single bed was turned down. A small cot had been set up in the corner. "You will take the bed," Sebastian said. It was not a request. "I will not," Rosalind argued. "I am your employee, not your—" "I will take the cot. You are my partner in this, and you are exhausted. I am a soldier. I have slept on rocks harder than that cot. Take the bed. That is an order." Defeated, she relented. She lay in the darkness, hyper-aware of his presence just a few feet away. She heard him sigh, a long, weary sound that seemed pulled from his very soul. "Are you afraid?" she whispered into the darkness. There was a long pause. "I am not afraid of Montcroft," he said, his voice raw in the quiet. "I am not afraid of the bounty hunters, or the scandal. I am afraid of what I will find in York. I am afraid of what my father truly became." In that moment, he was not the Iron Duke. He was a son, haunted by his father's ghost. "Whatever it is," Rosalind whispered back, "you will not face it alone." She heard him turn on the cot, but he said nothing more, and in the shared, tense silence, they both, surprisingly, fell asleep. York was a city of ancient stone and narrow, winding streets. Mr. Dryden's offices were located in a respectable, if uninspiring, building near the Great Minster. They left Thomas and Robert with the carriage, and Sebastian escorted Rosalind to the solicitor's door. He held her arm, a gesture that was publicly one of gentlemanly protection, but privately felt like an anchor for them both. The offices were quiet. A small, bespectacled clerk looked up, intimidated, as the Duke of Crestwood filled the doorway. "We are here to see Mr. Dryden, Sebastian Vane," he said. "Mr. Dryden is not—" The clerk stammered. "He is not seeing clients today, Your Grace." "He will see me," Sebastian said, his voice leaving no room for argument. The clerk scurried away. A moment later, a thin, whey-faced man in a drab suit emerged. He looked pale and nervous. This was Mr. Dryden. "Your Grace," he said, wringing his hands. "This is highly irregular. I was not expecting you. And yet I am here," Sebastian said. "We will speak in your office. Now." Dryden led them into a room piled high with dusty ledgers and boxes. He shut the door, his hands trembling. "I assume you have heard the news, Your Grace," Dryden said. "Lord Montcroft has made a formal claim against the late Duke's estate. He claims a default on a loan." "He claims a forgery," Sebastian said. "And I am here for my father's private papers, the box you hold for him." Dryden turned a shade paler. "Your Grace, I am bound by law. Lord Montcroft's claim he has a court order." "He has a court order based on a lie," Sebastian countered. "A lie you, I suspect, know all about. You were meeting with him, in secret, at his London house." It was a shot in the dark, based on Rosalind's information. It hit its mark. Dryden collapsed into his chair. "He threatened me," Dryden whimpered. "He said he knew. He knew things. He said he would ruin me. He said he would expose. Oh, God." "Expose what?" Sebastian pressed, leaning over the desk. "Your father, the late Duke. He was not the man you thought he was, Your Grace. He was reckless." Dryden went to a large iron safe, his hands shaking as he worked the combination. He pulled out a heavy, lacquered box. The Crestwood seal was on it. "Your father kept 2 ledgers," Dryden said, his voice barely a whisper. "One for the world, one for the truth. He was being blackmailed, Your Grace, but not by Montcroft." Sebastian took the key from his own pocket, a key he had worn around his neck since his father's death, and unlocked the box. It was full of papers. He took out the top ledger. He opened it. Rosalind watched his face. She saw comprehension dawn, followed by confusion, and then by a cold, soul-deep horror. His face went ashen. "This is impossible," he breathed. "What is it?" Rosalind asked, moving to his side. He showed her the page. It was a list of payments, large sums, paid out monthly, to a single recipient. "H.M., Sebastian read. "Harrington Montcroft," Rosalind said. "No," Sebastian said, his voice hollow. He turned the page. "H.M., Her Grace, the Dowager Duchess of Crestwood. Helena." Rosalind gasped. "Your mother." "He wasn't being blackmailed," Sebastian said, sinking into a chair, the ledger falling open in his lap. "He was paying her. He was paying his own wife. But why?" Dryden, seeing his world crumble, finally broke. "Montcroft, he didn't blackmail your father. He blackmailed your mother, the Dowager." "What are you talking about?" Sebastian demanded. "Your mother, Your Grace," Dryden said, "has been Lord Montcroft's lover for 20 years, since before your father died." The room spun. This was the twist, the real twist. "My father's death," Sebastian said, his voice dangerously quiet. "He found out," Dryden whispered, tears streaming down his face. "The Duke found out about the affair. He was going to divorce her, disown her, leave her with nothing. She and Montcroft, they couldn't let that happen. It wasn't a hunting accident, Your Grace. They cut his saddle cinch. They planned it. Sebastian Vane did not move. He did not speak. He just stared at the ledger, at the proof of his father's payments to a woman who was already betraying him. Rosalind, seeing the man she knew as the Iron Duke completely shatter, did the only thing she could. She put her hand on his shoulder. He flinched, then leaned into the touch, like a drowning man grasping for a rope. "They killed him," he said, not to her, but to the room. "My mother and Montcroft. They killed my father." "And the loan?" Rosalind asked, her mind racing. "The forgery?" "It was their plan," Dryden said, "to cover their tracks. With the Duke dead, the loan from Montcroft would come due. The marriage between the Duke and Lady Beatrice would merge the estates. Montcroft and the Dowager would control everything. They would be free to be together, and they would be the most powerful couple in England." Sebastian stood up. The grief was gone, replaced by something far more terrifying, a cold, absolute, and righteous fury. "Mr. Dryden," he said, his voice like ice, "you will gather every piece of paper, every letter, every ledger. You and I are going to London, and we are going to pay a visit to my mother." The return to London was a dark crusade. Sebastian Vane was no longer a man running from a wedding. He was a judge, jury, and executioner riding to a trial. He, Rosalind, and Mr. Dryden travelled in the main coach, while Thomas and Robert rode armed and alert, carrying the strong box filled with evidence. Rosalind watched Sebastian. The cold, calculating man from the wedding carriage was gone, and so was the haunted son from the inn. In their place was a man forged in a new fire, his purpose clear and his will unbreakable. He spoke little, but when he looked at her, his eyes held a gratitude that warmed her to the core. She was no longer his employee. She was his ally. They did not go to a hotel. They went directly to Crestwood House, the Duke's massive London townhouse. The staff, who had been in turmoil, gasped as their master strode in, his face like a thundercloud, with a trembling solicitor and a woman in a maid's dress at his side. "Send for my mother," Sebastian commanded the butler. "Tell her it is a matter of life and death. And send a message to Lord Montcroft and Lady Beatrice. Tell them I am ready to discuss the terms of my surrender, here, tonight." "Your Grace," the butler stammered, "are you certain?" "Do it!" Sebastian roared, and the butler fled. They waited in the Duke's study. Mr. Dryden sat nervously, clutching the ledger. Rosalind stood by the fire, her heart pounding. The first to arrive was the Dowager Duchess, Helena Vane. She swept in, a vision in black silk, her face a mask of practiced grief. "Sebastian, darling," she cried, her arms outstretched. "You're alive! That creature, that Miss Monroe, did she harm you? We have all been so worried." Sebastian did not move. He stood by his desk, the light from the fireplace casting shadows across his face. "Hello, Mother." His voice, cold and dead, stopped her. She faltered, her arms lowering. "Sebastian, what is this? And why is he?" she said, nodding at Dryden. "Here. He is here as a witness, Mother." "To this," Sebastian said, tapping the ledger on his desk. The Dowager's eyes widened. She recognized the book. "I don't know what you mean." "You and Montcroft," Sebastian said, his voice low. "You killed him. You murdered my father." The Dowager Duchess, for the first time, looked her age. The color drained from her face. "You cannot. That is a lie." "Is it?" Sebastian said. "A lie you paid for? Or a truth you killed for?" Before she could answer, the doors burst open again, and Lord Montcroft strode in, followed by a preening Beatrice. "So the prodigal Duke returns," Montcroft boomed, a smug smile on his face. Have you come to beg, boy? To finally agree to the marriage? It will cost you now. My daughter's reputation. Be quiet, Harrington, the dowager snapped, her voice shaking. Montcroft stopped, confused. He looked from the dowager's pale face to Sebastian's rigid one. Helena? What is going on? You, Sebastian said, pointing at Montcroft, are under arrest for the murder of my father, the Duke of Crestwood. Montcroft laughed, a short, barking sound. You are mad. You have no proof. I have this, Sebastian said, holding up the ledger. A record of payments from my father to my mother. Payments he stopped. I have Mr. Dryden's testimony, and I have the confession from your lover. He was bluffing, but Montcroft didn't know it. The Lord's eyes darted to Helena. You foolish woman! You told him? No, she shrieked. He's lying. He found the ledgers. It doesn't matter, Montcroft snarled, his mask of civility dropping. He took a step toward the desk. Give me the book, boy. And you, Beatrice. Rosalind's voice cut through the room. Everyone turned. They had forgotten she was there. She stepped out from the shadows of the fireplace. Beatrice sneered. You filthy gutter snipe, you dare show your face. You will hang for this. Will I? Rosalind said, her voice clear and strong. She held up a small object. The velvet box. Will I hang, or will you, for the theft of the Crestwood sapphires? Beatrice scoffed. Those fakes. Don't be... Not the fakes, Rosalind said. The originals. The ones you sold to pay your gambling debts. The ones I have the receipts for. From the jeweller you sold them to. He was a very forthcoming man. Once I mentioned Lord Montcroft's name. This was Rosalind's own twist. She had slipped out in York. She had telegraphed the jeweller, a man her own father had known. The reply had been waiting for her at Crestwood House. Beatrice's face crumpled. Father, they know. Montcroft looked from Sebastian to Rosalind. He was trapped. His son-in-law-to-be was accusing him of murder. His daughter was a confessed thief. It was all for nothing, he whispered, looking at Helena. All of it. For you. No, Sebastian said. It was all for you, for your greed. My mother was just your tool. No, Helena cried. I loved him. I love Harrington. You loved his power, Sebastian said, and he loved my money. A perfect match. He walked to the study door and opened it. Standing in the hallway were two men, not policemen, but two high-ranking magistrates, friends of his late father. Magistrate Powell, Sebastian said, Lord Davies. Thank you for coming. I believe you have heard everything you need. Lord Montcroft and my mother, the Dowager Duchess, have just confessed to the conspiracy to murder my father. Montcroft and Helena froze. They had been played. The entire scene was a trap. Arrest them, Sebastian Vane said. The great study door closed with a click, sealing off the echoing footsteps of the magistrates and their prisoners. The sudden, profound silence that descended was heavier than the arguments that had filled the room moments before. Beatrice Montcroft was all that remained of the wreckage. She had collapsed into a high-backed velvet chair, a boneless heap of ruined silk. The arrogant woman was gone, replaced by a whimpering child. He's gone, she whispered, her voice a reedy, pathetic sound. They took my father. Rosalind, standing near the fire, felt the adrenaline drain away. She looked at Beatrice, and for the first time felt only a vast, empty pity. Beatrice was not a villain. She was a hollow vessel, shaped by her father's ambition. Sebastian Vane, the Duke of Crestwood, had moved to the window, his back to the room. He stood as still as stone, a man carved from shadow, staring out at the London night. He seemed to have forgotten Beatrice entirely. He's gone! Beatrice wailed again, her eyes finally swiveling to Rosalind. What will happen to me?" "What you have always deserved, Beatrice," Rosalind said, her voice quiet but clear. Beatrice flinched, scrambling upright. "You!" she spat, a spark of her old venom returning. "This is your fault. You think. You came into our house, ate our bread, and you did this." "I did nothing," Rosalind said, taking a step forward. She was no longer the shrinking mouse Beatrice had known. "Your father and his mistress did this. Your own thievery did this. I only held up a mirror, and you were all too rotten to bear the reflection." "You will hang," Beatrice shrieked. The reward is for a fantasy," Sebastian said, his voice a cold growl. He did not turn. "The bounty on Miss Monroe is now a warrant for your arrest, Lady Beatrice, should you ever repeat the lie." Beatrice's mouth snapped shut. The reality dawned. She was alone, ruined, and penniless. "Please," she whimpered, her body dissolving into tremors. "Please, Rosalind, don't let them arrest me. The sapphires, it was just a trifle. A joke." "I am not you, Beatrice," Rosalind stated, walking to the desk and taking up a clean sheet of foolscap and a pen. "I do not find sport in the suffering of others. You will not be arrested for theft." Beatrice let out a ragged gasp of relief. "On one," Rosalind continued, "non-negotiable condition." She placed the paper and ink on the small table beside Beatrice's chair. You will write a full, public retraction of every lie. You will state that I, Rosalind Monroe, was a woman of unassailable character who was aiding the new Duke of Crestwood in his investigation. You will restore my name. Not for me, for the truth. "And then," Beatrice whispered, "and then you will disappear. You will take what few jewels you have left and retire to some small cottage in the country, and you will live a quiet, unseen life. If I ever hear your name in society again, I will have you charged. Do you understand me?" Numbly, Beatrice nodded. She picked up the pen, her hand shaking violently. Rosalind turned away. She would not watch. She walked to the fireplace, leaving the ruined woman to write her own social epitaph. After an eternity, the sound of scratching stopped. Beatrice, without another word, dropped the tear-stained paper on the desk and fled the room. The study was silent again, but this time it was a shared silence. Rosalind joined Sebastian at the window. The Iron Duke was gone, replaced by a man who looked broken. "My mother," he whispered, the words like glass shards. "She killed him. All these years I mourned him, and it was all a lie. He knew, and he paid her. He was a fool, or a coward. Or he was a man," Rosalind argued, her voice fierce, "who was trying to protect his son from the truth. Perhaps that was his last act of love." She looked at him. "You are not your father's weakness, Sebastian. And you are not your mother's poison. You are the man who saw the truth and did not flinch." He scrubbed a hand over his face, a weary, human gesture. He walked to the decanter, his hand shaking, and tossed back a brandy. "This," he said, gesturing to the room, "is over. The danger is past, and I must settle my accounts." Rosalind's heart gave a strange, painful lurch. "Settle your accounts?" "You," he said, staring into the empty glass. "You are owed, a debt I can never repay." He turned, his face unreadable, the Duke's mask sliding back into place. "I will see you settled, Miss Monroe. A townhouse in Bath, passage to America, first class, a dowry. You will want for nothing. You will be free." It was a generous, lordly, and utterly brutal dismissal. He was paying her. "You think I am another line item," she said, her voice trembling with a quiet fury. "A debt to be paid, a problem to be solved. No, I am offering you gratitude, a reward." "And I am refusing it," she snapped, her control breaking. "I do not want your gratitude, your grace." She threw the title at him, and she saw him flinch. "I do not want a house. I do not want your money." "Then what do you want?" he asked, lost. "I wanted the man," she cried, her hands clenching. "I wanted the man who sat in the shadows of that carriage, dressed in leathers, and was willing to lose a dukedom to find the truth. I wanted the man who slept on a cot in a storm-tossed inn, who shared his fears in the dark, and who treated me as his equal. Not this duke," she spat the word, "who stands in his grand house and offers me trinkets to clear his conscience." She was crying now, tears of rage and pain. She turned and marched to the door. "Keep your money, your grace. My name is my own. I will find my own way." Her hand was on the brass handle. "Rosalind, wait." His voice was not a command. It was a plea, a raw, desperate sound that stopped her cold. She paused, her back to him. She heard him cross the room. He came up behind her, placing his hand on the door just above her head, boxing her in. "Do not leave," he said, his voice a low, rough whisper against her hair. "Why?" she whispered back, refusing to turn. "So you can offer me a larger house?" "No," he said. He leaned his forehead against the heavy wood. "Because I am not. I do not know how to do this." "Do what?" she asked, her anger fading. "This," he breathed. "I have spent my life managing estates, debts, titles. I have never had to manage this. My heart." He took a ragged breath. "My offer. It was the armor of a coward. It was the only language I know, the language of transactions, and it was an insult. I know." He slowly placed his hand on her shoulder, turning her to face him. His other hand came up to cup her face. His eyes, no longer guarded, were an open wound. "I am terrified, Rosalind," he confessed. "I am terrified because I am offering you a settlement, when what I truly want to offer you is me, and I have no idea if you would want what is left." "What is left?" she breathed. "A ruined name," he said, his voice breaking, "a family steeped in blood, a title that is now a mark of shame. I am offering you Sebastian Vane, the man, not the Duke, and he is a ruin. He is the wreckage." Rosalind looked up at this powerful broken man. A slow, brilliant smile touched her lips. "Good," she whispered. He blinked, confused. "Good?" "I do not want a pristine duke," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I have no use for one. I want the man who sat in the dark. I want the man who saw me when I was invisible." She reached up, her fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. "Your name is not ruined, Sebastian. You just saved it. As for your ruin, I have always preferred castles with a bit of history. The damage is what makes them beautiful." He stared at her, as if he couldn't believe she was real. "They will say I am marrying beneath me. And they will say I am a social climbing adventuress," she replied, her smile widening. "But we will know the truth." "And what?" he asked, his voice now a low, hopeful whisper, "is the truth?" "The two fugitives met in a carriage," she said, rising on her toes, "running from their lives. And in the dark, they found one together." He didn't need any more words. He lowered his head and kissed her. It was not the kiss of a duke or a kiss of gratitude. It was a kiss of surrender. It was the end of a war and the beginning of a life. It was the taste of brandy and ash, and the promise of a future neither had been brave enough to dream of. When he finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "The tone will be insufferable." "Let them be," she murmured, her hands linked behind his neck. "We have faced down murderers, Sebastian. I am hardly afraid of a few old women in ugly hats." He let out a laugh, a real, deep, genuine laugh. It was the first time she had ever heard it, and the sound was more beautiful than any music. "Neither am I," he said, pulling her tight against him. "Neither am I. Not with you." He led her away from the door, back to the warmth of the fire. The wedding carriage had been a trap. It had been an escape. It had been their beginning. And here, in the ashes of a great house, the new Duke of Crestwood and his future Duchess stood, not as two halves, but as two whole, scarred, and finally free individuals, ready to face the dawn. And so, the Iron Duke and his shadow companion, Rosalind, proved that the truth is always more powerful than a lie, and love can be found in the most unexpected of places, even in a wedding carriage you were hiding in. Sebastian and Rosalind may have closed the door on the villains of their past, but their story is just beginning. The ton might be in an uproar, but the new Duke and Duchess of Crestwood have faced down murderers and scandal. A few gossiping ladies are hardly a threat. Did you love the twists and turns in this dramatic romance? Was there a moment your heart stopped? Let me know in the comments below what your favorite part of Rosalind and Sebastian's story was. If you enjoyed this tale, please don't forget to like this video and share it with a friend who loves a good historical drama. And of course, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We have so many more stories of intrigue, danger, and passion waiting to be told, and you won't want to miss a single one. Thank you for listening.